where you kind of left off from the Washington Post, writing on your departure that the falsehoods are winning. What did you mean? And what's the clearest evidence?
I was getting at the fact that increasingly Americans are willing to suspend belief and accept obvious falsehoods because it just fits with their political persuasions. And I was struck yesterday when Trump, he posted this AI generated picture of himself looking a lot like Jesus. And there was I think it was the Washington Post did a kind of man in the street interviews, asked people about it. And there was a person there who was clearly a Trump supporter. And they said, I don't believe Donald Trump would post something like that. That's not something he would do. And the person in the interviewer said it was on his social media account. It says Truth Social. And the person was adamant that's not something Donald Trump would post. And I would have loved to have done a follow-up with that person because, of course, an hour later, Trump said he did post it. But of course, he said he thought it was a picture of himself as a doctor. The thing you have to hand Trump is that he's utterly shameless and doesn't really care to be consistent or even, because if he thought that was a doctor, it makes you wonder how many times he entered a church and looked at the Christian iconography, because anyone else would clearly say, oh, that looks a lot like Jesus.
To paraphrase Lloyd Benson, my wife is a doctor. Sir, you are no doctor. So clearly something is different from when you started out in this enterprise. I believe you started writing the Fact Checker in 2011.
Right.
So what changed? Did politicians get better at lying? Did the media outlets treat lies differently? Or did audiences just stop caring?
There were a couple of factors. One is the rise of social media. I mean, there was a saying by the former editor of the Washington Post, Ben Bradley, who said a lie makes its way around the world before the truth is even getting its pants on. So that was always the case. But with social media, you could spread falsehoods far and wide. And when I started doing it, politicians in general, they would all stretch the truth. I would liken them to used car salesmen. Part of the fact checker was to help you check under the hood and find out what those claims were based on. But there was generally an idea that you should stay in the realm of reality. There was no real just outright falsehood. And Trump came along and he showed that there was not much consequence for just making stuff up. And part of Trump's secret sauce was he spent a lot of time listening to right-wing radio, and then he purposely regurgitated what he heard on right-wing radio. So on right-wing radio, people might have called in and said, there are millions of immigrants crossing the border. Now, back in the early 2010s, that was not the case at all. But Trump, so an ordinary politician, a 2014 Marco Rubio would not have said something like that. But when Trump went out and said it, there was a certain core group of people that said, finally, there's a politician telling the truth because he's saying what I believe. And so with social media, people got much more corralled into their ideological cul-de-sacs because they're all based on algorithms. When you start liking left-wing people, you're going to get more left-wing content. You like right-wing people, you're going to get more right-wing content. Increasingly, the country got sorted along ideological bounds in a way that wasn't the case anymore. And you add to that the consequence of our legislature, particularly the House of Representatives, becoming so you only have two extremes, to the left or to the right. There's virtually no one anymore in the middle. There's no reward for working across the aisle. And the way in gender support is to play to the base. And often to play to the base, you need to consistently mislead.